Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Out of the blue, but it goes back 3 months. First off, let me introduce myself. I'm Daniel, 28 years old. I was dating Sarah, 26 years old. But then I found out she had been cheating on me with a guy named Mike, 33 years old. Furthermore, Mike was engaged to a woman named Linda. She was 30. Sarah and I have been together since college, living together, fighting now and then, but mostly playing the fool in love. However, one day, I randomly remembered how a close friend of mine went through a nasty divorce, which got me suspicious of her actions. More precisely, I got curious about her phone. My anxiety got the better of me. So, while she was asleep, I checked her phone but didn't find any damning evidence at first. Just when I thought I was worried over nothing, I noticed a contact saved under Sarah in her phone, which was odd. Displaying the contact revealed a number I didn't recognize. I dialed it from my phone. Suddenly, a ringtone sounded from somewhere in the room. I seized the moment while she was still asleep to locate the ringing phone. Eventually, I found an unfamiliar phone hidden in the pocket of her coat in the closet. Sneaking into the bathroom, I checked the unknown phone. I was met with a flood of messages then. Tracing the emails back, it turned out their affair had been going on for 3 years. What a mess. Apparently, the guy was loaded and sweet to boot. I stepped outside, overwhelmed by my sadness, anger, and cowardice, and I called my best friend. Even though it was the middle of the night, but I oddly found myself laughing. The friend Ryan answered with, "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I was sleeping. "Yeah, my bad. What's up with you? I need your help this time." "This time? You've got to be kidding." "Afraid it's exactly that." "Are you serious?" "I wouldn't be calling you in the middle of the night if I weren't." "All right, I'm on my way." "You're at your place, right? Stay there and don't do anything stupid." After hanging up, I forwarded emails from Sarah's secret phone to mine. The content was appalling. "I love you." "Me too." "I'm so happy I met you." I just kept forwarding those messages. Soon after, Ryan arrived in his car. I started with an apology. "Sorry for dragging you out here in the middle of the night. I didn't mean to call you out. I'm just returning the favor for what you did for me," he said. I showed him the forwarded messages on my phone as soon as I got into his car. "No thanks, I don't need to see all of them. It's gross." "So, what do you want to do?" Given the suddenness of it all, I don't really know what I want. Honestly, I just thought of your divorce mess and ended up uncovering all this. I felt bad for calling you so late, but you're the only one I could talk to about this. He laughed. "You thought of my situation, huh? That's harsh. So, what do you want to do?" I honestly replied, "I want to punch someone right now." "Calm down, you know that's not going to solve anything, right?" "You know what? I can't stop the tears or laughter, but I'm calm. If you do something crazy, I'll knock some sense into you." He warned. "Thanks, I might need that." "So, what should we do about those two?" After thinking it over for a bit, he suggested. "The guy's rich, right? Why not shake him down for some cash?" But I replied, "No, I won't. Unlike you, I'm not in a position to demand compensation." "Okay, then let's see. I'm not considering hiring a private investigator, just so you know." After pondering for a while, he said, "Let's forget violence. How about we corner them, but you figure out how to do that?" I just nodded. Got it." Once my bout of tearful laughter had subsided, I went back inside, put Sarah's phone back, and crashed on the sofa. The next day, just before noon, Sarah literally woke me up with a slap. Feeling absolutely terrible. "Why are you sleeping here? You're going to be late." I had plenty of time, and my alarm hadn't even gone off yet. I left for work irritated beyond belief. It was then that the last bit of affection I had started to fade away. I had thought about giving it another go, but her inexplicable outburst in the morning made me decide on separation and revenge. From then on, I pretended everything was normal while sneaking peeks at the emails on the closet phone at night. "My boyfriend is being cold. I'm here if you need someone to talk to." As if the guy causing the problem could offer a solution, right? "I want to hear all about it, maybe at your place." "The idiot called Mike wants to come over to our place, huh? Well, maybe if I make myself scarce, he'll show up. Let's set something up." Anyway, I am checking the closet and saving emails like a thief every night, but she's totally clueless. They both have no idea they're being found out. I've been pretending to sleep on the sofa at night, saying I'm just tired while Sarah obediently goes to bed alone, sulking though. She never imagined I'd be setting a trap. First up, the classic fake business trip for 3 days. Our company doesn't even do business trips. Plus, I withdrew all our joint savings and canceled the house lease. At the same time, I signed a lease for a new place just for myself. Almost everything went according to plan within 2 weeks, sleeping on the sofa every night. I barely got any rest, but it was worth it. The last email I saved was, "We'll see each other soon." And, "Love you lots." That perked me right up. On the day of my supposed business trip, things went off script. I never expected Sarah to invite Mike over on the very first day. I hadn't taken the day off yet, so I reluctantly went to work. That's where Ryan came in clutch. As soon as Sarah left for work, Ryan came to my house. He moved everything I owned to a storage unit. Originally, I was supposed to move everything to my new place on a day off. I rushed through my work that day and asked my boss for early leave. It put a slight strain on my work reputation, but since it didn't affect my job performance, he let me go. Then I met up with Ryan. He finished moving everything quickly, and the house was practically empty. Not a trace of me left, as if I'd vanished. It was hilariously perfect. When Ryan saw me, he said with a bit of excitement, "This plan is pretty hardcore. You really fought it through. I might be an idiot for not realizing sooner, but I've been fooled for 3 years. This is nothing compared to that. If she didn't like me, she could have just broken up and then gone out with him. It's just that simple step she skipped. All right, ready to move on to the next part." At that moment, I had another plan in mind, to involve Linda, Mike's fiancée. Somehow, Ryan had taken 2 weeks off work to track down Mike using a photo from Sarah's phone. Not only did he find him, but he also managed to locate his house, a move straight out of a private investigator's playbook. That wouldn't have been possible if Sarah and Mike didn't work at the same place. Furthermore, Ryan made sure Mike wasn't home before he approached Linda's house. Then Linda came out. After explaining everything in detail to her, she broke down in tears, unable to believe it. Ryan also shared his own divorce story with her and asked for her cooperation. She agreed to help us. In the car, on the way to pick up her, he mentioned softly, "Linda seemed like a good person. Lucky it's before the wedding." Sounding quite sad, we arrived at Mike's house, and Ryan called Linda out. I got out of the car and greeted her neatly. She looked like an average person, not exceptionally beautiful. When I said, "I'm terribly sorry for my girlfriend's outrageous behavior, and I'm really sorry to involve you in this plan," she replied, "You apologizing won't change anything. I feel the same." And she continued, "I also apologize for the mistake of the man who is to be my husband." Ryan then interjected, "Linda, even though you're not married yet, what you might see today could be the worst scenario possible, something you'd never want to witness. Are you sure you're okay with this? If it's too much, you don't have to come. We'll still report back to you and provide the evidence." Indeed, from my perspective, she looked worn out and listless, the primary victim being thrust into this mess. However, she firmly said, "I'm okay. Today, we have a family meeting planned with both our parents. No matter what happens or in what condition, we'll drag Mike back. Sarah will also be brought along. Please understand that." Her demeanor changed from sorrowful and apologetic to determined. A warrior was born. In the car, we explained the plan in detail to Linda. "I'm breaking up with her anyway, so whatever happens next is fine by me. Don't you have any lingering feelings?" Honestly, I did at first. But seeing her go on with her life without any guilt, I've completely lost those feelings. "I understand. I wondered if it would be bad for you if you still had feelings, but it seems I needn't have worried." I initially thought she was frail, but she turned out to be quite intimidating. While Linda and I waited in the car, Ryan kept watch. Linda shared that she had been cheated on by a previous boyfriend before dating Mike. She had warned him, "If your cheating ever comes to light, I won't just cry and let it end there." He had assured her, "If I cheated, I'd have to die along with the other woman. Believe me, I love only you. Goodbye to Mike's future." Then, a call from Ryan. They're here, no doubt about it. Ready. The moment had arrived. I jumped out of the car and headed to where he was. Sarah and Mike walked up, arm in arm, looking pleased with themselves. I was the only one who slumped at the sight. Linda mused. I wonder what kind of face Sarah will make when she sees the almost empty house. She was grinning as if it was someone else's problem. Terrifying. But hearing that reignited my fighting spirit. Thank you, warrior. Even from behind, it was clear. Sarah unlocked the door, and the moment she opened it, she froze. My spirit soared. Sarah entered the house, followed by Mike. I tiptoed to the door. Then, I got a call from Sarah. Just as expected. Time for action. I swung the door open and answered the phone with, "Hello," only for her to scream, "Oh my God," and Mike to freak out with, "No way." At that moment, Ryan and Linda weren't yet at the door. "Why are you here? What about your business trip?" I laughed and said, "Of course." It was a lie. "That's terrible. You tricked me." Tricked? Compared to 3 years, this is nothing. "What do you mean 3 years?" That's when I called Sarah's other phone. The ringtone ominously echoed. "No." You saw it? Snooping around is the worst. The absolute worst. Is the person who looked the worst. You can't forgive him. Of course. I can't believe this. Then it's over between us. Right here, right now. I've already moved out everything I bought. This house's lease is canceled too. She was stunned. One last thing. Say the same thing to this person. I opened the door and there was Linda. "Nice to meet you. I am Mike's fiancée, Linda." Sarah froze completely at the sudden turn of events. When Mike stammered, "Hey, why are you here?" Linda coolly replied, "Why? Because you were followed, and this is the result." Just then, Ryan popped up saying, "Oh, hello. I'm from the detective agency. We've recorded all the emails and conversations." Whoa, an unexpected bluff. What's that about? I wasn't even informed. Mike just collapsed right there. With a sly smile yet politely, Linda said, "Thank you for your work. Even if it was just for a few hours." Ryan was like, "Oh, no problem at all. With that, we'll be off." Linda added, all with a smile, "Well, this place is already canceled. No point standing around. Let's go home. Our parents will be arriving soon." Mike was trembling and expressing his apology. Sarah just collapsed. I said, "It might be tough, but hang in there. I'll be leaving now. If anything comes up, contact me right away." And decided to leave. Linda thanked me and closed the door. Sarah was saying, "Daniel, it's not what it looks." Wait. But I didn't hear the rest. Perhaps she remembered. I said I wouldn't listen to any excuses. As Ryan and I waited in the car, a taxi arrived at the house shortly after. All three came out of the house from a distance. There seemed to be no physical altercation among them, which was a relief. I went to change my phone number and email immediately. I stayed at Ryan's place that night. And as planned, I used my day off the next day for the moving process. I made sure to properly thank him. And now I live peacefully as if nothing happened. As for the aftermath for the three of them. Firstly, Mike's engagement was broken off. He was sued for compensation in the presence of a lawyer. It turns out he wasn't as wealthy as he claims to be. He had to pay the expense in installments. Sarah was also sued for compensation by Linda. It was quite the scene with their parents involved. I don't know what happened to her after she paid the money in full. Linda went back to her parents' house. Before leaving, she specifically came to report on those two fools and said she would be living quietly at home for a while. As for Ryan, who worked so hard for me, he fortunately found a new girlfriend. Everything turned out well in the end. When I first discovered Sarah's infidelity, I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. Yet, with the help of my good friend, I managed to get my revenge and felt a great sense of relief. To this day, I still don't understand why Sarah chose to cheat when breaking up would have been so simple if we weren't even married. If she was just after the thrill, it certainly ended in a foolish way. I hope Ryan and Linda find happiness in the future for their help in this matter. If you found this story as jaw-dropping as I did, please like, comment, and subscribe for more intense stories. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so Hey everyone, Welcome back to the channel where we dive into the most unbelievable and emotional real-life stories. Today, we have a tale that will leave you speechless, titled Caught My Wife Cheating and Our Child Isn't Mine. The heartbreaking truth. Caught my wife cheating and our child isn't mine. The heartbreaking truth. Man, I was buzzing with excitement as I pulled into the driveway, a whole day earlier than planned. I was picturing the look on Jess's face, how she'd jump into my arms, and little Sammy's laughter. But then, there it was, this shiny red Mazda I'd never seen before parked right where my old Chevy should be. Confusion hit me like a sucker punch. I got out, my heart already doing this weird drum. The front door was unlocked. Odd. Inside, the house was too quiet. Then, from upstairs, laughter. Not the innocent kind, but something else, something that made my gut twist. I took the stairs two at a time, a bad feeling creeping up my spine. And there they were, Jess and Mike, my golf buddy, in our bedroom with my wife. They didn't even hear me come in, too caught up in their whatever it was. My world stopped. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I was the guy in the driver's seat. Jess saw me first. Her eyes went wide, like she'd seen a ghost. Mike, that jerk, he just froze, sheet barely covering him. The room spun, and every corny line from every bad movie about cheating spouses played in my head. What the hell, Jess? I remember my voice sounded weird, like it was someone else talking. She started babbling, trying to cover up, saying it wasn't what it looked like. Yeah, right, Mike mumbled something, looking for his clothes. I couldn't even look at him. This was a guy I'd shared beers and secrets with. And now this. How long? That was all I could muster. Jess was crying now, saying it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But her words, they sounded hollow, empty. I felt this rage building up, but at the same time, I was just broken, you know? The argument got heated. I was throwing words like bullets, not caring where they hit. Jess was pleading, saying she was sorry, that she'd been lonely. I didn't want to hear any of it. It was like watching our life together turn to ashes right there. I stormed out, leaving her crying and Mike scrambling to get dressed. The last thing I heard was Jess calling my name, but it was too late. Something had shattered inside me, something I knew couldn't be fixed. I drove off, my mind a mess of anger, betrayal, and 1,000 questions with no answers. How long had it been going on? Had everyone known but me? The hurt was a physical thing, clawing at my chest. So much for the surprise homecoming, huh? Never thought I'd be sitting in a dingy motel room, my life turned upside down. Just yesterday, I was on top of the world, coming home early to surprise my family. Now, here I am, staring at peeling wallpaper, trying to digest Jess's confession. A long-term affair, with my best friend, no less. It felt like a bad dream, except I couldn't wake up. Jess cried her eyes out, saying it started as something small, something meaningless. But you know what? It didn't matter how it started. It mattered that it happened. She kept saying she was sorry, that she never meant to hurt me. Sorry? That word seemed so small, so useless now. I couldn't stay there, not another second. I grabbed my keys, walked out, and just drove. No destination, no plan, just the need to be anywhere but there. The roads were empty, kind of like how I felt inside, hollow, echoing with every word Jess had said. Ended up at this motel on the outskirts of town. The guy at the front desk gave me a look, probably thought I was up to no good. If only he knew. I crashed on the bed, but sleep was a stranger that night. My mind replayed every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I must have missed. Morning came, and with it, a decision. I couldn't let this slide. I found a divorce lawyer online, someone discreet. We met at a coffee shop, away from prying eyes. I couldn't risk Jess or anyone else finding out before I was ready. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, was a straight shooter. He laid it out plain and simple. Divorce was messy, but given the circumstances, it was straightforward. Then he dropped a bombshell I hadn't even considered. The paternity test. Sammy, my boy, was he even mine? That hit me harder than the affair. The thought of losing Sammy, of him not being mine, it was like a punch to the gut. Mr. Henderson said it was standard procedure in these cases, but nothing about this felt standard. I agreed to the test, not knowing it was eating me up inside. Henderson arranged everything discreetly. I drove back to the motel, feeling like a character in some tragic movie. Except this was real life, my life, and I had no idea how this scene was going to end. You know, they say hope's a dangerous thing. Can lift you up, then drop you from 100 feet. I was clinging to this thin thread of hope that Sammy was mine. But when I got those paternity test results, that thread snapped. Not my kid. Not my son. I can't describe that feeling. Like falling into a cold, dark pit. I confronted Jess. Had to. I needed to hear it from her. Needed her to look me in the eyes and say it. She was at home, looking like a ghost of herself. When I showed her the test results, she just crumbled. Everything came out. The affair, the lies, and yeah, Sammy. He was conceived during her fling with Mike. I remember she kept saying she was sorry, but it sounded so far away. My mind was racing, heart pounding in my ears. It was surreal, you know? Here was this woman I'd loved, trusted, and she'd just torn our world apart. Sammy, the kid I'd raised, played with, loved, he wasn't mine. The betrayal stung, but losing Sammy, that was a whole other kind of pain. Filing for divorce felt like the only thing left to do. I couldn't stay with Jess, not after all this. The trust was gone. Love turned to ash. It's funny, in a sad way. You think you know someone, share your life with them, and then one day, it's like you never knew them at all. I met with Mr. Henderson again, told him I wanted to file for divorce, citing Jess's infidelity. He didn't seem surprised. Maybe he's seen it all before. Paperwork, signatures, legal jargon, it was all a blur. I was just going through the motions like a robot. Jess pleaded with me, said we could work it out for Sammy's sake. But how do you stay for a child that isn't yours? How do you look past such a lie? I couldn't. Maybe I was weak, maybe I was angry, but I just couldn't. That night, in the quiet of my motel room, I thought about everything. The happy days, the laughs, the plans we'd made. All gone. I thought about Sammy, how his laughter used to fill up the house. Now, there was just this deafening silence, a void where my heart used to be. I know some people bounce back from stuff like this. They find a way to forgive, to rebuild. But for me, it was the end of a chapter. A painful, gut-wrenching chapter. I had to close it, had to try and find a way to start over. Alone. Ever had that moment when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you gotta jump but scared as hell? That was me, the day Jess begged me for another chance. She was crying, promising she'd change, that we could fix things. But some breaks, they're just too deep to mend. I told her no. It was the hardest word I'd ever had to say. Part of me still loved her, you know? But a bigger part was just done. Too much hurt, too many lies. I was determined to move on, to find some semblance of peace. That's when the real storm hit. Divorce proceedings started, and man, it was like opening Pandora's box. Everything got public and messy real fast. Our once quiet, happy life became the talk of the town. People I'd known for years, neighbors, friends, they all had something to say about it. Word got out about Jess's affair. It spread like wildfire, the kind of juicy gossip that small towns thrive on. I'd go to the grocery store and hear whispers, see the looks. It was like we were on display. Our private pain turned into public spectacle. And then, the picking side started. It's crazy how these things go down. Friends we'd had dinner with, celebrated holidays with, suddenly they were choosing camps. Some sided with Jess, trying to be sympathetic to her mistakes. Others patted me on the back, saying I was better off without her. Family tensions rose too. Jess's parents, they wouldn't even look at me. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. My own folks were furious, said they'd always had a bad feeling about her. I didn't need their "I told you so's," but there they were, served up at every family dinner. Everywhere I went, it felt like I was walking through a minefield. Old friends became strangers, strangers became judges. I'd see Mike sometimes, in town, and the anger would bubble up all over again. But I kept my cool, mostly. Didn't want to give the town more to talk about. This whole process, it wasn't just about signing papers and splitting assets. It was like reliving the betrayal over and over. Every legal document, every court date, it was a reminder of what we'd lost, of how far we'd fallen. But through it all, I kept my focus. I had to get through this, had to close this chapter of my life. The house, the memories, Jess, even the friends who turned their backs, they were all part of a past I needed to leave behind. I was looking forward to that final court date, to the moment when I could finally say I was free. Free to start over, to rebuild. It was a faint light at the end of a very dark tunnel, but it was something. Something to hold on to. Life's got this funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. After the whirlwind of the divorce, I thought I'd seen it all. But then came the news that Mike, the guy who'd helped turn my life upside down, had bailed on Jess. Scared of the public scorn, he took off, leaving her to face the music alone. Can't say I was surprised, but part of me felt a weird satisfaction. Karma, right? In the midst of all this, the custody battle for Sammy was raging. It was the hardest part, fighting for a kid I'd raised as my own, but who wasn't my blood. The court saw things my way, though. They looked at Jess's infidelity, her unstable situation, and they granted me custody. Winning felt bittersweet. I was glad to have Sammy, but the circumstances, man, they were messed up. The divorce settlement was another blow to Jess. She lost the majority of our shared assets. The house, some of our joint savings, it all came to me. I didn't want it to be a battle, but things just played out that way. Jess was left struggling, both financially and socially. Her affair had cost her more than she'd probably ever imagined. I started anew, got myself a small apartment. It was nothing fancy, but it was a fresh start, a place free of all the memories that haunted me in our old home. Decorating it, filling it with new stuff, it felt like I was slowly piecing my life back together, one day at a time. Jess, on the other hand, she had it rough. I heard through the grapevine that she was struggling to make ends meet. Her social circle had shrunk too, with most of our mutual friends siding with me. I won't lie, there was a part of me that thought she got what she deserved. But another part, maybe the part that once loved her, felt sorry for her. Life in my new apartment was different. It was quieter, less chaotic. I missed the noise sometimes, missed the family life I thought I had. But this new silence gave me space, space to think, to reflect, to figure out who I was without Jess. Sammy visited on weekends. It was hard, explaining to him why things had changed, why mom and dad weren't together anymore. I tried to keep it simple, tried to shield him from the ugly truths. He was just a kid, after all. Seeing him in my new place, laughing and playing, it gave me hope. Hope that maybe we could get through this, that we could find some semblance of normalcy in this new life. As for Jess, I heard she moved to a smaller place, something more affordable. People said she was looking for work, trying to get back on her feet. Part of the town still whispered about her, about what she'd done. I guess some stains are hard to wash off. It's strange, how life works out. One day you're up, the next you're down. But through it all, you just keep going, keep moving forward. That's what I was doing, one step at a time, in my little apartment, with Sammy by my side. Life, has a way of turning around when you least expect it. Amidst all the chaos, something good started happening. My business, which I'd poured my heart into, suddenly began to take off. It was like the universe saying, "Hey, it's your time now." Success brought a new kind of energy, a reason to get out of bed each morning with a smile. But just as things were looking up for me, Jess reached out. She wanted to talk, said she missed us, wanted to try again. But for me, that ship had sailed. I couldn't go back to what we had, not after everything. So I declined, as gently as I could. It wasn't about revenge. It was about moving forward. Jess's life, meanwhile, took a nosedive. She was facing isolation, not just from our old friends, but from her own family too. Her parents, who'd once treated me like a son, now disowned her. They were ashamed of her actions, couldn't understand how she'd thrown away what we had. It was sad, really. I knew Jess was struggling, trying to find her way back to some kind of normalcy, but it seemed like the world had turned its back on her. Back in our little town, people started looking at me differently. Where once there were whispers and stares, now there was sympathy, understanding, and even support. I'd bump into old friends at the grocery store, and instead of awkward silence, there were pats on the back, kind words. It was comforting, sure, but it also felt a bit surreal. I was the same guy, just a bit more broken, a bit more cautious. It was tough hearing about how Jess's parents had disowned her. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. That was someone I had loved, someone I had planned to spend my life with. And now, she was out there, alone, cut off from the people who should have been her support system. In a way, our roles had reversed. I used to be the one shrouded in whispers and pity. Now it was Jess. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a small part of me that felt vindicated, but mostly, it just made me sad. Sad for what we had lost, for what could have been. My business success kept me busy, kept my mind off the mess of my personal life. It was a blessing, really. Work became my sanctuary, a place where I could create, grow, and forget about the heartache for a while. As for Jess, I heard she was trying to rebuild bridges, but it was a slow process. People's memories are long, and forgiveness doesn't come easy in a small town. I hoped, for her sake, she'd find some peace, some way to make amends and move forward. Life's too short to live in perpetual regret. And me? I was just taking it one day at a time, enjoying the little successes, and learning to live again. The business, my little beacon of hope, was growing, and so was I. Life's a roller coaster, huh? Just when you think you're stuck in a loop, it shoots you off in a new direction. That's how I felt when I started dating again. Casual stuff, nothing serious. It was like dipping my toes in the after years of being afraid to swim. It felt good, liberating even, to meet new people, to have conversations that weren't weighed down by my past. Meanwhile, Jess moved to a smaller town. A fresh start, I guess. I couldn't blame her. The air in our town was thick with whispers about us, especially her. But you know how small towns are, news travels fast, and so do rumors. I heard through the grapevine that her new community was already wary of her because of her past. It's tough, starting over with that kind of baggage. In the midst of this, Sammy reached out to me. The kid was confused and hurt, and who could blame him? His world had been turned upside down just like mine. It was a tricky situation. He wasn't my biological son, but those years of raising him, they meant something. They meant a lot, actually. So, I decided to maintain a role in his life, distant, but supportive. I couldn't just turn my back on the kid. That wouldn't be fair to him. Navigating these new relationships wasn't easy. Dating felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. I was always careful, didn't want to rush into anything. The women I met, they were great, but I kept them at arm's length. Couldn't risk getting too close, not yet. I was still healing, still figuring out who I was outside of my marriage. And Sammy, he needed me, in his own way. We'd meet up, grab a bite to eat, talk about school, sports, normal stuff. I could see the questions in his eyes, the ones he was too scared to ask. Why aren't you and mom together anymore? Why did everything change? I tried to answer as best as I could without hurting him more. I wanted to protect him from the ugly truths. Jess's situation weighed on me, despite everything. I heard about her struggles, about how she was trying to rebuild her life in a place where nobody trusted her. It wasn't easy for her, and part of me felt guilty for that. But then I'd remember the betrayal, and that guilt would fade. She made her choices, and those choices had consequences. Life was moving forward, slowly but surely. Dating, dealing with the fallout of the divorce, maintaining a connection with Sammy, it was a lot. But I was managing, finding a new rhythm in this strange dance of life. There were moments of loneliness, moments of doubt, but I was learning to trust again, to open up, to maybe, just maybe, find love again. Sammy's presence in my life was a constant reminder of the good times, the happy memories. He was the bridge between my past and my future, a connection I wasn't ready to let go of. And as for Jess, I hoped she'd find her way too, find some peace in her new life. We were both starting over, in our own ways. Life's funny, isn't it? Just when you think you've got it figured out, it throws you a curveball. That's what happened with me and my new relationship. We'd been seeing each other for a while, and things just clicked. Before I knew it, we were talking about getting serious and then engagement. It felt right, like a second chance at happiness. Something I never thought I'd get again. On the flip side, Jess was trying to put her life back together too. She'd been trying to start a new relationship, but things weren't going so smooth for her. The past has of clinging to you, and in a small town, people's memories are long. I heard she was struggling, that it was hard for her to find someone who could look past everything that happened. As for me, I was over the moon when my girlfriend said, yes. We started planning a modest wedding, nothing fancy. Just a small gathering of close friends and family. It was a new beginning, a fresh start. But as we dived into wedding plans, I couldn't help but think about Jess. Was it wrong to feel a twinge of guilt? Maybe, but I did. Jess's struggle hit a new low. She was battling depression, reeling from all the losses she'd faced. It's one thing to hear about an ex struggling, but it's another to know they're suffering because of choices that involved you. I felt for her, despite everything. I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone. The news of my engagement spread quickly, as news does in small towns. Jess heard about it, and I heard that it hit her hard. She felt a deep sense of loss, they said. It's strange, how life takes these turns. Here I was, starting a new chapter, filled with hope and happiness, and there she was, stuck in a chapter that had long closed. I often caught myself thinking about how our paths had diverged so drastically. Once, we had shared dreams, plans for the future. Now, our lives couldn't be more different. It was a sobering realization, a reminder of how fragile happiness can be, how easily life can be upended. As the wedding day approached, I found myself reflecting on the past, not with anger or regret, but with a kind of acceptance. What happened with Jess, it was a part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. I had a future to look forward to, a life to rebuild. And Jess, well, I hoped she'd find her way out of the darkness. Everyone deserves a shot at redemption, at happiness. So, as I planned for the wedding, I made a silent wish for Jess, hoping she'd find peace, maybe even love again. Life goes on, it always does. And sometimes, just sometimes, it gives you a second chance. Life's about moving forward, right? That's what I kept telling myself as my fiancé and I stood in front of our new house. It wasn't just a building. It was our fresh start, a symbol of new beginnings. The place was modest, but filled with hope and possibilities. We were turning pages, leaving old chapters behind and writing new ones. Meanwhile, Jess's struggles seemed to deepen. I heard from mutual friends that she'd lost her job. It was a tough break, especially with everything else she was dealing with. Her spiral into despair was like a dark cloud hanging over her life. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy. Despite our past, I never wanted this kind of hardship for her. Our wedding day came, and it was exactly what we wanted, beautiful but low-key. A small ceremony with the people who mattered most. As I stood there, exchanging vows with my new wife, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It was a moment of closure, a final seal on the past, and a hopeful gaze into the future. But life has a way of reminding you of things you'd rather forget. Right after the wedding, Jess tried to reach out to me. I don't know what she wanted. Maybe to congratulate me, or perhaps seek closure for herself. But I couldn't go back there, couldn't reopen old wounds. So, I chose to ignore her attempts. It might seem harsh, but some bridges are better left uncrossed. The news of my new wife's pregnancy came as a joyous shock. We were going to have a baby. It felt like life was rewarding us, giving us a gift after a storm. We announced it to our friends and family, and the outpouring of love and support was overwhelming. This baby, it was a symbol of our love, a beacon of our shared future. I often wondered about Jess during this time. The news of our pregnancy would inevitably reach her, and I couldn't help but think about how it would affect her. It must be hard, watching someone you once shared a life with move on in such significant ways while you're struggling to keep your head above water. But as I looked around our new home, felt the excitement of impending fatherhood, I knew I had made the right choices. Moving on wasn't just about leaving someone behind. It was about embracing the future, embracing hope. Jess's journey was her own to make, and I sincerely hoped she'd find her footing. As for me and my new family, we were just at the beginning of a beautiful journey. A journey filled with love, challenges, and the promise of new life. It was time to look ahead, to build a future filled with laughter, love, and happiness. A future where the past was just a distant memory. Ever noticed how life has a way of balancing things out? Well, as my life started taking this beautiful turn, with a new baby and a loving family, Jess's life took the opposite route. I heard through the grapevine she'd become something of a recluse. It's weird, thinking about someone who was once so vibrant and full of life now shunned by the very friends we once shared. Our baby's arrival was nothing short of a miracle. Holding that tiny bundle of joy, I felt a happiness I hadn't known was possible. My wife and I, we were a team, building this warm, loving environment for our little one. It was like the universe was making up for the rough patch with an abundance of joy. Jess, on the other hand, struggled to start afresh. Her past seemed to follow her like a shadow. I'd occasionally hear about her attempts to rebuild her life, to start over. But the whispers of her past mistakes seemed to haunt her at every turn. It's tough to move forward when your past clings to you so tightly. Sitting in our living room one evening, watching my wife and our baby sleeping peacefully, I couldn't help but reflect on my journey. From the heartache and betrayal to this moment of peace and contentment. I felt grateful, Grateful for the new beginnings, for the second chance at happiness. But the story of our lives isn't just about the happy endings. As much as my life had flourished, Jess's had taken a downturn. She was living alone, isolated from the friends and life she once knew. I heard she spent a lot of time reflecting on her choices and their consequences. It's a tough pill to swallow, facing up to your mistakes, especially when they cost you almost everything. It's strange how life pans out. Here I was, living this happy, fulfilling life, while Jess, who had once been at the center of my world, was now just a distant, fading figure in my past. It wasn't a story of triumph or revenge. It was just life, with its ups and downs, its lessons and its consequences. As I looked at my sleeping family, I realized how far I'd come. The pain and betrayal were now just chapters in my story, not the entire book. I had moved on, found love and happiness again. And Jess, well, I hoped that she would find her peace too, in whatever form that might be. Our lives had diverged onto such different paths. Mine filled with the laughter of a child in the love of a family, and hers, a quiet journey of self-reflection and redemption. It's funny how life works out, isn't it? One moment, you're down and out, and the next, you're on top of the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, you find that the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. If you found this story as shocking and heart-wrenching as we did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life dramas. Share your thoughts below and tell us what you would have done in this situation. Until next time, stay tuned for more unbelievable tales of betrayal. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a story that will leave you on the edge of your seat. It's about how I caught my wife cheating with my assistant and the ultimate revenge I took on them. The title of this video is Caught My Wife Cheating and Took Ultimate Revenge on Her Lover. My name is Jake Mitchell, and this is my story. Trust. That's one thing I thought we had rock solid in our marriage. But life loves a good curveball, doesn't it? It was just another Thursday, or so I thought. I was rummaging through drawers for my charger when I found her phone, buzzing with notifications. Usually not a big deal, right? But this time, it was different. The messages were from AP, my assistant. The content was shocking, filled with explicit texts that left no doubt about their affair. My gut twisted into knots. This wasn't just flirty office banter, it was a full-blown betrayal. Trust. That's one thing I thought we had rock solid in our marriage. But hey, life loves a good curveball, doesn't it? It was just another Thursday, or so I thought, rummaging through drawers for my charger. Then I found her phone, buzzing with notifications, not usually a big deal, right? Except this time it was. I wish I could say I didn't snoop, but those messages, they were like a car crash you can't look away from. Texts from AP, my assistant, no less. Stuff that would make a sailor blush. My gut twisted into knots. This wasn't just some flirty office banter. It was full-blown betrayal. So, I confronted her. Laid it all out. Her face went ghost white, then red hot. Denial. Accusations. The whole 9 yards. I was paranoid, delusional. But the evidence was glaring, right there in pixels and bytes. She kept denying, though, like if she said it enough, it might come true. I wasn't going to let this slide. I needed the truth, concrete and undeniable. Enter my pie. A guy who looked like he stepped out of a noir film. He got to work, tailing, taking snaps, the whole shebang. Meanwhile, I turned our home into my personal surveillance state. Cameras hidden in the most unassuming places. It felt wrong, but what choice did I have? Days passed. A weird mix of normalcy and espionage. Then, the pie hit the jackpot. Videos. Man. Not just texts, but actual, irrefutable proof of her and AP together. Watching it felt like a punch to the gut, each frame a betrayal. That night, I sat in our living room, the evidence laid out on the coffee table like some twisted exhibit. The truth was right there, undeniable. My next move was clear, but man, was it going to be a doozy. Never thought I'd be the guy serving cold, hard truth with the appetizers. But here I was, at our meticulously planned dinner party, where I'd unveil my wife's betrayal. Our closest friends and family, all gathered around, clueless about the storm brewing. I clinked my glass, signaling for silence. "I've got a surprise," I announced, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. The screen lit up, showing texts, emails, and the grand finale, video evidence of my wife's affair with my assistant. Gasps echoed around the room. I watched their faces, a mix of shock and disbelief. My wife's face was a canvas of horror and denial. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, but her words fell flat in the heavy air of betrayal. I didn't bask in the drama. Instead, I moved to the next act of my plan. Filing for divorce seemed like a natural step, but it was more strategic than emotional. I cited her affair as the reason, knowing it would influence the proceedings in my favor. My lawyer was a shark, and I was ready to let him loose. But the real blow was the asset freeze. I had our accounts and assets legally frozen, leaving her financially stranded. The look on her face when she realized the extent of her predicament was something I thought would bring me satisfaction. Instead, it was a hollow victory. In a desperate attempt, she pleaded for forgiveness, promising it was a mistake. "I never meant for this to happen," she cried, tears streaming down her face. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. I was done being the understanding husband. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life. As the chapter closes, I'm left with a mix of emotions. There's a sense of justice, sure, but also a profound sense of loss. I had loved her, after all. But that love was buried under layers of betrayal and deceit. The path ahead was clear, but it was a path I'd walk alone. You know, they say life's a roller coaster. But mine? It's more like a thriller movie, the kind that leaves you on the edge of your seat, heart pounding. It all started when a P, my right-hand man at work, vanished into thin air. Just like that, poof, gone. This was the guy who'd been warming my seat at home while I was out busting my chops. I should have been relieved, but his disappearance only thickened the plot. That's when the gears in my head started turning. If life wanted to play games, I was game. It was time for a little payback. A carefully orchestrated plan to teach my dear wife a lesson she wouldn't forget. The first move? A social media crusade. Nothing too dramatic, just a few well-placed posts to give people a glimpse of her true colors. The reactions were instant. A mix of shock, outrage, and for some, a bit of "I knew it." The fallout was like a line of dominoes. First, her job. She called me, tears and all, saying she got the boot. Scandal, they called it. I almost felt a pang of something. But no, this was the bed she made. Then came the cold shoulder from friends, family, the whole entourage. She was like a pariah, and I was the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it, watching her world crumble piece by piece. But there was this nagging voice in the back of my head, wondering if I'd gone too far. I shook it off. This was justice, right? Payback for all the lies, the deceit. I was the victim here, taking back control. As her world shrank, mine expanded. I was in the driver's seat, steering this narrative where I wanted it to go. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was a show, a spectacle, and I was both the director and the lead actor. A part of me wondered, when the final curtain fell, what would be left of the stage we'd both played on. If someone had told me my life would turn into a twisted game of chess, I'd have laughed. But here I was, in the thick of it. It started with my wife, desperate and penniless, her accounts frozen solid by my doing. She was scrambling for pennies, a far cry from the life of luxury she was accustomed to. Watching her struggles stirred something in me, but my resolve was firm. This was her doing, her consequences to bear. Then came the eviction notice. I owned the house, and she had no legal claim to it. The notice was just a piece of paper, but it might as well have been a dagger. It felt like the final nail in the coffin of our shared life. She pleaded, cried, but I was deft at it. This was retribution, plain and simple. That life, oh, it loves its curveballs. Just when I thought I had the upper hand, a mysterious package landed on my doorstep. Inside, evidence that turned my world upside down. AP, the man I thought was just a cheating scoundrel, was actually a pawn in a larger game. He was targeting me, not just personally, but professionally, a hired gun by a rival business. It was like watching a thriller unfold, except I was the protagonist. My wife, as it turned out, was just a means to an end, a tool in their elaborate scheme to take me down. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She was used, manipulated, just as I had been. This revelation threw me into a tailspin. The anger and thirst for revenge I'd been nursing was now mixed with a strange cocktail of guilt and confusion. Had I been too harsh? Was this really justice, or just another layer of the game? As my wife fought tooth and nail against the eviction and the asset freeze, I found myself in a moral quagmire. Part of me wanted to let her drown in the mess she'd helped create, but another part, a part I'd tried to silence, wondered if I was any better than those who'd set this chain of events in motion. Her legal battles were futile, her resources a mere fraction of what she once had access to. It was a losing fight, and we both knew it, but as I watched her struggle, a new battle raged within me. A battle between the man I'd become in this saga of revenge and the man I once was, before betrayal, before vengeance, before this all-consuming game had begun. This chapter of my life, it wasn't just about settling scores anymore. It was about unearthing truths, about understanding the real enemy, and perhaps, about confronting the demons within. Ever had one of those moments where everything feels like it's spinning out of control? That's where I found myself, right in the middle of my grand plan for revenge. It started off as a simple idea, a public event, the kind that would put my wife's dirty laundry out for everyone to see. I set the stage perfectly, ensuring every eye in the community would be on us. The night kicked off without a hitch. There she was, my soon-to-be ex-wife, clueless about what was about to hit her. The room was buzzing, and then I dropped the bomb. The evidence of her affair splashed across a giant screen. The gasps, the whispers, it was like music to my ears. But then, things took a turn. A couple of her diehard friends, or what she had left of them, jumped to her defense. Words were thrown, tempers flared, and before I knew it, a full-blown physical altercation erupted. It was chaos, a whirlwind of shouting and shoving, and there I was, in the eye of the storm, feeling a rush I couldn't explain. But then, the unexpected happened. In the midst of all this madness, my wife collapsed. Stress, isolation, the whole scandal, it was too much for her. You'd think that would have been a wake-up call for me, right? A moment to step back and rethink this vendetta. But no, I was too far gone. My heart had turned to stone. I watched as she was rushed to the hospital, and I felt nothing. Just when I thought things couldn't get more twisted, enter the mysterious benefactor. Out of nowhere, someone started throwing support her way, pulling her out of the financial abyss I'd tossed her into. It was infuriating. Who was this person undermining my carefully laid plans? This chapter of our lives was like a game of chess, with moves and countermoves, but I was starting to lose track of who was playing who. There I was, thinking I was the puppet master, but with every twist and turn, I was left wondering who really had the control. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, doesn't it? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, boom, you're hit with a revelation that turns everything on its head. That's exactly what happened to me. I was deep in my quest for revenge when I decided to dig a little deeper into AP, the man who turned my life into a living soap opera. I started digging into AP's past, and let me tell you, it was like peeling back layers of an onion. Each layer revealed something more rotten than the last. Turns out, this guy was a pro at playing people, a real-life puppet master. He'd been manipulating relationships for personal gain his whole career. Knowing this added a whole new flavor to the betrayal. It wasn't just a fling, it was a calculated move. Meanwhile, my wife, in a desperate attempt to salvage whatever dignity she had left, made a public apology. It was broadcasted for all to see, a display of remorse, or so it seemed. Part of me wondered if there was any sincerity in her words, if she truly regretted the pain she caused. But by then, my heart had hardened. I couldn't see past my own hurt and anger. So, I did what any self-respecting, scorned husband would do. I rejected her apology, and not just privately. I made sure everyone knew that her words meant nothing to me. This rejection, it was like the final nail in the coffin for her. I watched, almost detached, as she spiraled further down. Her life, once so full of charm and grace, was now in ruins. The vibrant woman I once knew was no more. In her place stood a broken shadow, a reminder of the damage caused by betrayal and revenge. It's strange, being in this position. Part of me relished in her downfall, felt a sense of justice being served. But another part, a quieter, more reflective part, wondered if this was really victory. Watching her descent, I couldn't help but question what I'd become in this quest for retribution. Was I really the hero of this story? Or had I turned into something else? Something darker? Who would have thought, right? After all the chaos, the lies, the heartache, the man who started it all, my assistant, AP, just waltzes back into the picture. He shows up out of the blue, oozing charm and deceit, offering my wife a deal straight out of a spy movie. The nerve of this guy, he wanted her to betray me, to hand over sensitive company information in exchange for a fat stack of cash. As I watched from a distance, I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was cornered, desperate, her life a tattered mess because of the games we'd all been playing. I could tell part of her was considering it, weighing the option of one last betrayal for a chance to escape this nightmare. But then, something unexpected happened. She said no. After everything, after the lies, the affair, the public humiliation, she drew a line. She refused to sink further, to betray me again. It was a moment of clarity, a flicker of the woman I once knew, the one I thought I'd lost forever to greed and deception. That's when AP showed his true colors. The guy wasn't just a cheat, he was dangerous. He threatened to hurt me, to take me out of the picture if she didn't comply. The stakes were suddenly higher than any of us had anticipated. And then, another twist. My wife, the woman I'd vilified, the one I'd pushed to the brink, came to me with a warning. She told me everything. AP's return, his offer, his threat. It was a surreal moment, standing there, listening to her, realizing that despite the venomous path our lives had taken, there was still a shred of concern, of care. It was a chapter straight out of a thriller, with betrayals, threats, and unexpected alliances. The lines between right and wrong, between revenge and justice, they were all blurred. Here we were, in the middle of a game that had spiraled out of control. A game where the only winning move was not to play. But the question remained, were we too far gone to back out now? Life's funny. One moment you're on top of the world, the next, you're setting a trap for the guy who tried to ruin your life. That's where I found myself after my wife's bombshell warning about AP's comeback and his devious plans. I was burning with a mix of anger and a strange sense of gratitude. There she was, trying to save me from the mess she helped create. Irony at its finest, huh? So, I hatched a plan, a real cunning one. I used the info she gave me, turned the tables on AP. It was like setting up a chessboard, every piece moving exactly as I wanted. And man, did it work. AP walked right into the trap, thinking he was the hunter when he was actually the prey. The look on his face when the cops slapped those cuffs on him was priceless. All his schemes, his manipulations, they crumbled to dust right there. But here's the kicker, even with AP out of the picture, things between me and my wife were too far gone. There was no fairy tale ending, no tearful reconciliation. The betrayal, the lies, they were too deep, the wounds too raw. We were past the point of no return. And it didn't end there for her. With AP's arrest, all sorts of skeletons came tumbling out of the closet. She got tangled up in the legal mess, facing charges for her part in the whole debacle. It was a hard fall from grace, and I didn't lift a finger to break her fall. Then came the divorce settlement. Let's just say the prenup was a lifesaver. I walked away with everything, leaving her with nothing but memories and regrets. I know it sounds harsh, but hey, actions have consequences, right? The final blow? She ended up homeless. Yeah, you heard that right. From living in luxury to having nowhere to call home. Her life, once so full of promise and laughter, now a shadow of its former self. As I close this chapter, I can't help but wonder, was it worth it? The revenge, the satisfaction of seeing her life crumble, did it really make up for the betrayal? I guess some questions don't have easy answers. All I know is, life goes on, and so do I, in a world that's a little less bright, a little less kind. Life's a funny thing, you know? Just when you think you've got it all figured out, it throws you a curveball that knocks you off your feet. That's where I found myself, in the aftermath of it all. Rebuilding my life, focusing on my business, trying to find some semblance of normalcy in the chaos that had become my existence. The community, well, they were split right down the middle. Some looked at me as a hero, a man who stood up for himself. Others, they pitted her, the woman who lost everything. You could feel the tension, the whispers, the judgments. It was like living in a fishbowl, every move scrutinized, every decision judged. Then came my wife's regret. It was like a floodgate had opened, apologies and pleas for forgiveness pouring out. But it was too late. The bridge was burned, the damage done. I couldn't find it in me to forgive, to forget. I was moving on, or at least trying to. But life, oh, it had other plans. Enter the plot twist. A long-lost friend of mine reappears out of the blue. And guess what? He was the mysterious benefactor helping my wife all this time. Talk about a stab in the back. Here I was, thinking I knew my friends, my enemies. But the lines, they were all blurred. He believed in second chances, redemption, all that jazz. But me? I felt betrayed, tricked. It was a rift that couldn't be mended, a friendship lost in the crossfire of my vendetta. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, my wife, beaten down by life, makes one final plea. Not for love, not for reconciliation, but for survival. She was at rock bottom, and even then, I couldn't bring myself to lend a hand. It was a decision that weighed on me, a reminder of the cost of revenge. This chapter of my life was a crossroads, a test of character and loyalty. What do you do when the lines between right and wrong are blurred? How do you choose between self-preservation and compassion? These were the questions that haunted me as I stood at the precipice of a new life, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. If you told me a year ago that my life would turn out like this, I would have laughed you out of the room. But here I am, staring at the ruins of everything I once held dear. It all came crashing down, starting with me slamming the door shut on my wife's final plea. There was no going back, no more chances. I was determined to close this chapter of my life, no matter the cost. My wife, left with nothing, surprised me though. She found this resilience, this will to survive despite being at rock bottom. Watching from afar, I saw her grappling with new challenges, legal battles, health issues, the whole 9 yards. It was like she was clawing her way out of a hole, determined not to let the darkness consume her. But, as I sat in my tower of solitude, the winds began to shift. The community, which once had my back, started to turn. Whispers of my ruthlessness, my cold-hearted revenge, began to spread. Friends became strangers, and strangers became critics. My reputation, once my most prized possession, was now tarnished. Then, the unthinkable happened. My empire, my business, which I had sacrificed so much to protect and grow, began to crumble. It was a slow, painful process, like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. I had been so focused on my vendetta, so consumed by my need for retribution, that I had neglected the very foundation of my success. In the end, it wasn't just my wife who lost everything. I stood amidst the wreckage of my own making, realizing the heavy price of my vengeance. My once flourishing business was now a shadow of its former self, my personal life a barren wasteland of broken relationships and lost connections. As the chapter closed on this tumultuous saga, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. In my quest to punish my wife, to make her pay for her betrayal, I had lost everything. My story, which began as a quest for justice, ended as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of revenge. There was no peace, no satisfaction, just the hollow emptiness of a man who had let his thirst for vengeance consume him. If you found this story gripping, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more intense and personal stories like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Remember, if you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and consider subscribing so that I may bring you more Reddit relationships videos. Now, let's get into today's Reddit relationships video. This story is called, "Found Out My Wife is Cheating on Me Through My Work Presentation Via an SD Card." I can't believe this. We have been married for 17 years, and this is how I found out she was cheating on me. Absolutely heartbreaking for me to see this in front of my coworkers. The wife I thought was mine turned out to be someone else's, and what hurts even more is that it happened through a damn presentation at work. For those who don't use SD cards, they often come with an adapter or a small card reader, which makes them easy to read without having to remove the card from your camera. So anyway, the other day I had to present a project at work, and when I went to load up my presentation on my laptop, my wife's SD card was in there. Now, we both have laptops, but she has been using her sister's old one that is a bit slow. So she sticks her SD card with all her important stuff, her offsite backup in it, and uses mine for photos, etc. I saw her SD card in there, but figured she put it in by mistake until I opened the file explorer. Inside my wife's folder were folders of pictures from some random man's wedding. This shocked me beyond belief. I was devastated. And after opening one of the pictures that I thought was my presentation for the day, I felt like throwing up. My mouth was literally open for about 5 minutes after I turned on the projector screen. And the first thing I noticed is a photo of my wife and another man making out. When the other coworkers saw that, they looked at me real fast, and I turned off the projector and injected the SD card. My boss even saw that. He canceled the presentation and told me to go home, and he told me to take a few days off. I was in complete shock after what I just saw. Then I became angry. I packed up my things, got in my car, and drove home. I was thinking 17 years gone. How could she do this? How could she hurt me like this? How could she be so heartless and disgusting to even put me through all of this? I wanted to stop and have a drink, but I knew that wouldn't help anything. It would only hurt even more. She has to go, I thought. She betrayed everything and everyone she said she loved. I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders as I pulled into my driveway and walked through the door. What do I say? The wife showed up at home before me and is in tears and scared to death that I left work early because someone let her know what happened using social media. When I walked in, I didn't even say anything to her. Didn't say hi or anything. I simply put my laptop back down, pulled out the laptop, and told my wife, "I need to show you something." She looks at me confused and said, "Okay." My wife had no idea what was about to happen as I clicked on the presentation button and didn't know it, but a whole new reality for her just began. She looks at me and starts to cry and apologize profusely and tries to hug me. I back away and tell her not to touch me. I asked her, how long have you been cheating on me? To my shock, she said she has been cheating on me for 3 years with a married man. My mouth drops to the floor. I said, what? You're cheating on me with a married man? She bows her head and starts crying. I just shake my head at her and say, you just ended this marriage. There is nothing you can say or do that will make me change my mind. Your cheating got me sent home from work. She interrupts and says, I'm sorry again. I yelled and said, I don't care. I told her right then and there, I want a divorce. She yells, please don't do this. I am sorry. I told her sorry wasn't good enough for her cheating and walked away from her. I grabbed a laptop to get the photos off the SD card and save them to my cloud so I can save them to where she can't delete them. My wife walks over to me with my back turned to her. She comes up behind me and hugs me. I told her to let me go. We are not doing this. I told her, you really need to think about where you are going to live. At that moment, her whole demeanor changed. She went from being extremely apologetic to being angry in a flash. She looks at me and says, I will fight you for everything. At that moment, I knew this was not going to be a quick divorce. I am also thinking how stupid she was for leaving evidence on the SD card to which I have already saved the photos to the cloud to which she has no access. She gives me this look and walks past me and goes into the bedroom and starts packing her things. I am just standing there looking at her, thinking, where is she going? Just when I was trying to figure this out, she comes up to me with a suitcase in hand and tells me that she is going to her mother's place until things cool down. I said, what? Cool down? For who? You or me? She says she will be in touch, but reminded me that she is going to fight me on the divorce. She doesn't work, so I might be in for some alimony. At this point, I didn't say anything else to her. She was in an angry mood and she was leaving, which in my case initially is a good thing. Soon after, she drove off, but before leaving, I grabbed the SD card from my laptop and placed it in a safe place. 3 days go by. I haven't heard anything from my wife. So I call around to a few attorneys to find out what I have to do and the procedures in filing for divorce. So far, it's not looking good for me as far as alimony is concerned. Even with the proof of her cheating, I still may not get away scot-free without paying alimony. I am just worried about how much. I am not trying to pay this woman a dime, but the fact that we have been married for 17 years and I am the primary breadwinner, it looks like I may have to pay something, but it's unclear how much. A few more days go by. I get a text from my wife asking, can we meet for dinner? Her treat. I hesitated at first, but then agreed. I wanted to see where she was going with this. We agreed to meet at a very nice restaurant in town. I showed up first and ordered a drink while waiting for her. She shows up and sits down. She immediately starts telling me how sorry she is about what she did. She said that she really loves me and never wanted to cheat on me, but that guy was a lot younger than her and he constantly pursued her. He bought her expensive gifts and showered her with lavish dinners at fancy restaurants. I told her it doesn't matter how much he spent on you. The fact of the matter is he didn't want his wife. She chuckled. I shrugged my shoulders, then added, why does a married woman need all these boyfriends? Why do you have to leave your husband behind so you can go spend time with him? She told me that he always wanted to be intimate with her and she wasn't feeling it. So she would stop things from happening and just spend time with him. She said that eventually, when he got the picture that nothing was going to happen between them, then he stopped pursuing her for intimacy. I frankly just got right into it. I asked her, why did you want to meet me? I haven't changed my mind about divorcing you. She wanted to know if we can talk about the divorce and what she wanted from the divorce. I said, the lawyers are going to handle that. She then says, I don't have money for a lawyer. I then say, what about your parents? She indicated she hasn't told him about me divorcing her yet. She just told them we had a lover's quarrel and she didn't want to be around me. I interrupted her and said, you're going to have to tell them. Tears start rolling down her face. And then she looks up at me and says, is there anything I can do? I hesitated and said, get yourself some counseling. Then she says, what about you? I said, I didn't cheat on you. I don't need counseling. You asked, what can you do? Counseling for starters. Just so you are clear about this, I am not stopping the divorce. She says, okay, What else do you want? I said, one step at a time, get counseling first, and we will go from there. I said, one more thing. When your counseling is done, I want you to tell your parents what you did. She says, please don't make me. I said, that's the only way I would even consider taking you back. You get counseling and tell your parents. I said, then, and only then I would consider taking you back. I told her, I can't believe I would even consider taking her back. She says, why would you say that? I said, because you threw away 17 years. I really don't even know if I can trust you again. She again apologizes and starts crying. She looks up at me and says, I would do anything you need me to hopefully regain your trust. I look at her and say, you know what you need to do for starters. But I reiterate to her that I am not stopping the divorce. Even if she does everything I ask, it's hard for me to trust her and don't know if I ever will. She then tells me to please give her a chance. She again tells me she is sorry and doesn't want to throw away 17 years. At this point, I am thinking, why did I allow her a second chance? I guess I don't want to totally throw away 17 years. But at the same time, I don't want to look foolish for taking her back. And she cheats on me again. We conclude our dinner meeting, walk out of the restaurant. She turns around and hugs me and tells me that she still loves me deeply and to please be patient with her. I look at her and tell her, it's all up to you now to convince me to not divorce you. And right now it's not looking so good. She says she understands and will do everything I ask. We then go our separate ways. As I am dealing with my emotions and the decision to maybe give her another chance, I will try to come back with an update. Have you ever considered that apartment life may be more than simply loud parties? Until I learned the reality about what was happening outside the walls of my apartment, I assumed that my neighbors were only complaining about the noise. My wife was having an affair with 2 other men, and I found out because they were spending the nights at my apartment. When I learned, I was astonished, but I made the decision to learn more and try to answer the riddle. I'll share this tale with you today, along with how I learned the reality of what was happening in my flat. Jaeger met Christina when he was already 33 years old. His eyes were drawn from the start to a gorgeous but slender, sickly-looking girl, out of sympathy and a desire to assist, and when they subsequently communicated and corresponded a bit, he understood he had fallen in love. Since Igor was in the military and frequently traveling, they kept in touch with Christina via social media. Christina worked as a social worker, taking care of the elderly. Almost every night, they would communicate through video chat, exchange the latest events, express their opinions, and even get a little wicked. Jaeger said, I'll be there soon and I'll kiss you. He sincerely missed Christina, and it had been 3 months since their last encounter. She said with a smile, I can't wait, and Jaeger felt warm within. Jaeger was eager to pop the question to his lover while he was in town after seeing her upon his arrival. At the conclusion of the evening, he presented Christina a ring. He had planned a lovely celebratory supper for her at his house. She readily agreed, without hesitation. Even before he could take the ring out of his pocket, he assumed she had said yes. He had a very simple wedding, brought his new bride into his flat, and then went once again for work. Christina felt miserable and lonely. She didn't fully appreciate the impact of her husband's presence in her life from phone calls and regular networking. One day, a friend extended an invitation to her for a stimulating game, assuring her wonderful company and a fun evening. Christina happily concurred. She greeted her squad after arriving at the designated location and time. There were 5 other males on the squad in addition to Christina. All of them, with the exception of Christine, attended university together and had a strong friendship. Christina requested that her buddy invite her more frequently since she enjoyed the game. She so kept herself occupied till Igor showed up. Christine abandoned the game when he was at home. She vowed to come back when Igor was gone, so the rest of the squad accepted it with grace. And that's what occurred. When Christina came back to the game that evening for the first time following the break, their team won, so they made plans to celebrate in the cafe. They stayed there until closing, and at that point, everyone in the group was inebriated. One of the males, Boris, followed Christina when it came time to depart. He had been openly flirting with her for a while, but this evening he became more daring and even kissed her. Christina phoned the man to her vacant apartment once the booze in her blood completed its job. They awoke in the same bed the next morning. Later, Boris visited her a few more times, which expertly made her lonely evenings more bearable. When Igor saw little bruises on his wife during their intimate moments, he became suspicious that something was wrong. When he inquired about their origin, Christina nervously stated that she had purchased them while attending a dancing lesson with a friend. They never brought up the topic again once Igor's vigilance was satisfied by the response. Later, Christina started having extramarital romances with two other members of their team in addition to Boris. When a neighbor stopped her on the stairs one day and threatened to tell Jaeger everything, she did not hesitate to bring them to her home. She first banned the trio from visiting her home, but when summer arrived, the watchful neighbor moved in with the cottage and Christina took over the old house. She twiddled her thumb at her temple and used foul language as she informed her buddy about Christina. Their interaction and participation in games came to a stop after that. Jaeger frequently saw the displeased looks of his neighbors while he was walking home. He was told by a married couple who lived directly above Jaeger and Christina's flat and who had just had a kid that their intimacy with his wife was particularly noisy and turbulent. He learned from them that Jaeger wasn't the only one who heard the groans. Our apartment's groaning has drawn complaints from our neighbors. What are your thoughts about that? That evening, he harshly questioned his wife. She was ashamed and said that she occasionally viewed intriguing films without her spouse. So to say, she did it to de-stress and raise her husband's expectations for his business trip. These comments stirred Jaeger and he took Christina at her word. Autumn arrived. All of the city's roadways were covered with colorful leaves that had fallen from the trees. Jaeger eagerly anticipated his approaching holiday during the final days of his business trip. In order to surprise his wife, he booked a luxurious hotel stay and paid for a trip to the beach. That in mind, he made his way back home. Outside his home, he encountered Grigory Ilyich, a neighbor who had previously threatened to reveal Christina as he got out of the taxi. His expression was grave. He didn't even give Jaeger his customary greeting smile. He was greeted coldly by the neighbor who then probed Jaeger for a while. Jaeger was surprised when the man entered the room from a distance and said, "Your wife doesn't waste any time. She's got men coming over, 3 of them." He began by talking about his life and his wife. His back collapsed as his pulse suddenly spiked. He regarded Grigory Ilyich as though he had just spoken the silliest thing possible. However, he could see by the man's entire demeanor that he was not lying. After saying thanks for the information to his neighbor, the latter yelled after him for Jaeger to make an adult introduction. The spouse then finished piecing everything together in his mind. The neighbors complained of the haymakers on his wife's body and the groans. Everything was apparent. Jaeger himself simply didn't see it, and Ilyich didn't want it either. Christina was meant to be in her house. When his train came, Jaeger contacted her from the train station. She gave him a warm hug and a grin as she welcomed him. When she saw her spouse was acting strangely, she kindly inquired as to what was happening. Jaeger fixed his gaze unblinkingly on his wife. He was unexpectedly confronted with an unloved lady from a weird, unpleasant woman who he had been dreaming about. He even had the impression that his wife smelled foreign and odd. Grigory Ilyich was seen. As Igor started, he saw Christina stumble and grip the door jamb. "I was told something fascinating here." Christina's lips were trembling as she regarded him with fear. She became even pallid as Jaeger spoke. Christina sobbed irately to the ground, her hands covering her face. She did not contest the truth. She didn't hide anything. She just gave Jaeger the truth. He listened to her while he sat on a seat in the hallway. He abruptly said, "I'm going to sell the apartment." Christina cried even more when she said, "I can't live here after this. It's disgusting." She begged her husband to forgive her, but he simply shook his head and said, "Sorry." Jaeger wasn't dishonest. The very following day, he listed the flat for sale, and because he purposefully priced it low, purchasers came forward swiftly. He moved and divorced throughout his whole trip. On the other side, Christina went back to her mother. She couldn't even afford to rent an apartment on her wages as a social worker in a small town. In amazement, her mother sobbed for days. One of the three guys she had been hanging out with, Boris, admitted to her that they had battled about whether any of them could make a married lady feel sexually attracted to them. Christina was totally appalled by the news and humiliation she had received. She had foolishly believed that she liked the three of them simply. Christina sobbed and pondered about the whole thing for a while. She had lost touch with that business. She also lacked the time to look for a replacement. She made an effort to secure a part-time position so she could leave her mother's home. But she had plenty of time to reflect on how her own treachery had harmed her own life before she went to sleep. It was initially just a game that wasn't meant to have any lasting effects. She was only trying to cheat to see what would happen. But soon she found herself being sucked into a vortex of desire from which she was unable to escape. Today, I'll share with you the tale of a woman who, after initially preparing for a small change, ended herself on the verge of infidelity. For 5 years, Nikita and Dasha had been dating. After being married, they moved into Nikita's parents' old flat, which they later decided to leave to their kid after renting it out for a period. Nikita worked at a car dealership, while Dasha was a dental office administrator. They seldom argued and had a very equal relationship. At this point, Dasha started to exhibit an unexpected aspect to his personality. She used to reassure her husband that she truly enjoyed her job and that she could make money rather than just sit around the house doing nothing. But suddenly she started to bring up his exhaustion from dealing with people more and more frequently. She occasionally brought up her pals, who their husbands had given the go-ahead for not working because they could support the entire family. Naturally, Nikita understood what she was trying to say. But as of now, he could not see how they could possibly make enough money to support both of them. He was eagerly anticipating an increase in income at work. He had recently met his manager and requested a raise. They promised to give him an answer when they had given it some thought. Nikita was regrettably unimpressed on the day they planned for another chat with his boss. The employer was informed that it could not reconsider his remuneration at this time. The man arrived home that evening in a bad temper. He still had to share this chat with his wife. She seems more concerned about her husband's choice. Dasha's agitation was as anticipated. She even became irritated at first. She had genuinely depended on her husband's promotion because it moved her closer to a higher level of living, if not a total release from her employment. She blamed her husband for not being persistent for a long period that day, and she remained silent the remainder of the evening. About a week has gone. The wife informed Nikita one day that she had chosen to take on additional shifts this month after letting some of her anger and complaints go. The couple was set to go on a vacation. For a very long time, she had wanted to get herself a new phone. The moment was right to increase income. The husband merely noted his wife's statements rather than engaging in an argument. And you can clearly see from them that you haven't given me any gifts. The man even started considering how much cash he would need to save up for a new phone as a present and when he would need to do it. The suggestion was understood. I had added extra shifts at my clinic a month earlier, but the shift worker still hadn't returned from vacation. My husband occasionally wanted to inquire about her colleague, but he usually arrived in the evening, exhausted, and the thought entirely escaped his head. Nikita got up early one weekend. Dasha had departed for the shift and was no longer at home. He made a leisurely trip to the kitchen to prepare himself a cup of coffee, but was interrupted by an unexpected phone call. Alexander, a good friend of his, called. "Hello, are you up yet? Come on over," he said with concern in his voice. "Something serious, most likely." At this time, Nikita couldn't recall Sasha taking him anyplace. As Nikita hadn't even had time to eat at home before they met, he had just ordered himself breakfast as they entered the cafe. "Remember our Grishka then?" His companion was introduced. "He recently went to place a veneer, and as you are aware, this pleasure is not inexpensive. Can the man, however, afford it? He owns a number of hotels." Nikita responded. "Why did you call me to?" "To discuss having new teeth." He chuckled. "How do I to inform you? He visited the clinic where your Dasha works, and that's the problem." She reportedly retained his number after the meeting and began messaging him from her own number. He made the decision to boast to me about how a clinic beauty was making advances toward him. I was immediately aware when I learned the dentist's name. At the same time, Nikita's appetite disappeared. He gently inquired as to the precise subject of his wife's letters to their common buddy. He informed him that she had been begging to meet him and openly flirting with him. They had even briefly crossed paths once, but it was simply for conversation and nothing more. But it was obvious that she had big aspirations. Grisha's phone number was requested by Nikita, who then called him that day. He spoke about the circumstance and inquired further about their encounter. She had, in fact, seen him on the day she was meant to have an additional shift. In other words, it's possible that her boyfriend didn't take a vacation. Dasha merely created an excuse for herself so she could meet other men without risk. In exchange for one of her additional shifts, the husband asked his acquaintance to set him up with Dasha. Moreover, just to be clear, this is a true love date, potentially with a continuation rather than merely a get-together to speak. And he will plan the continuation on his own. When Grigory realized he had been flirting with his old friend's wife, he was initially ashamed and did not even want to take part in the whole thing. But after some consideration, he came to the conclusion that his friend required assistance in order to surround everything. Grigory and Dasha met on the scheduled day at a restaurant. Additionally, Nikita was nearby on the street. While they were having a pleasant talk, the false lover signaled to his buddy that it was time for his wife, quite simply, started to flirt with him by holding his hand and making suggestions about prolonging the evening. Nikita entered the establishment and moved swiftly toward their table. Not even enough time for Dasha to take her fingers away. "What's up, wife? Have you got a roving shift today?" her spouse mockingly inquired. Dasha grew pale as she made a dumbfounded face at her husband, averted her gaze, and made an effort not to meet his eyes. After detailing every interaction they had, Grigory concluded by saying, "And you have seen the rest for yourself." When the husband tried to lift his wife off the table by grabbing her arm, she retreated in terror. "I won't touch you, so let's leave. Get your belongings out of the flat and leave right now," her spouse said. Dasha gave no resistance since she knew her marriage was ended. Beginning the next week, Nikita reported to her place of employment to inform the director that their administrator had established a dating group for herself there. When Dasha's shift attendant learned that Dasha's husband had arrived, she informed him that Dasha had done this before. She promptly saved his number when she saw a customer enter with cash, then made an effort to strike up a conversation with him. It appears that she was seeking for a better and wealthier choice. 2 witness testimonies were sufficient. Dasha lost her job at the clinic. She was able to rent a tiny apartment, but because she was out of work, she was unable to renew the lease. She then temporarily moved in with friends while seeking for a new career. She still had a solid list of possible suitors, of course. None of them, however, rushed to respond to the obnoxious woman. Nikita soon started living alone and filed for divorce. And because of the circumstances surrounding his ex-wife, he came to his own views. He then purposefully assessed the mercantilism of his prospective picks for mistresses. If this story left you stunned, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales and life lessons. Join our community and never miss a moment of these dramatic twists.